Today's event is taking place on the stolen land of Tohono O'odham, O'odham Jewett, and Pasquayaqui Peoples Territory, colonized and now known as Tucson, Arizona. Connecting with this land and holding a moment of remembrance is one way WFSA practices decolonizing and unsettling the systems of colonialism that live around and within us. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona's inaugural virtual summit. To kick off today's program, we join WFSA CEO Dr. Amalia Luxardo in studio.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona's inaugural virtual summit. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, staff, and supporters, thank you for attending. Before we kick off today's event, we encourage you to join the live stream chat. Simply use the QR code on screen to join via phone or type the URL in a new browser window. We have staff online to answer any questions you may have throughout the day. Today's event has been carefully curated to provide our greater community with an opportunity to not only get to know the foundation and our work, but to understand why WFSA's research, innovative solutions, advocacy, and community investment are as important today as they were over 30 years ago when we were founded as the Women's Foundation of Southern Arizona. While our name has changed, our mission has not. WFSA innovates to create social, political, and economic change that achieves equity for women and girls. And while our scope has broadened to include all the corners of our beautiful state, one thing remains at the core of what we do. We envision an Arizona where women and girls of all identities thrive. All four of our strategic priorities are designed to work in concert, with each one as a building block and influencer to the other three. You will hear from a myriad of WFSA staff, experts in their respective fields, about how research, innovative pilot programming, advocacy, and community investments are impacting hundreds of thousands of women and girls throughout Arizona. Before we move on with today's programming, I'd like to share some exciting news with you. After the requisite COVID hiatus, our annual luncheon is returning to an in-person event. I'd like to extend a personal invitation to you. Join us for the return of our annual luncheon on May 4th, 2023 at the Tucson Convention Center. Stay tuned to your inbox and our social media channels for more details coming soon. Now, let's continue with today's program. Research is at the heart of everything we do. Joining us today in studio is Gori Gladish, Director of Research and Advocacy. Over to you, Gori.
Thank you, Amalia, and thank you all for joining WFSA's virtual summit. As the Director of Research and Advocacy, I'm honored to share our findings, including what we focused on this past year and what we have in store for 2023. WFSA's research drives everything we do, from our public policy work to our grant making and innovative strategies. Every facet of our work is rooted in nonpartisan research and is validated by a committee of women who have lived the experiences. Through research, WFSA identifies the biggest economic barriers and opportunities for women and girls in Arizona. We take that research and create bold, innovative solutions that generate change. We recognize that knowledge, data, and awareness are vital in understanding the barriers preventing access to systems of care, so we collaborate with numerous research partners to conduct studies that guide our work for gender equity. We know that thorough, accurate, and intentional research takes time, and we value our research and community partners for conducting and supporting these efforts. During this year, WFSA engaged in 2 major research projects. First, in partnership with the University of Washington, we updated the self-sufficiency standard for the state of Arizona. We'll be talking with our research partners from the University of Washington in just a bit. Secondly, we conducted research using an online tool created by the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, which predicts which Arizonans enrolled in public benefits will encounter the benefits cliff. So what is the benefits cliff exactly? Well, the benefits cliff occurs when individuals lose public benefits, usually suddenly, when they exceed the income eligibility limit. Individuals can experience the benefits cliff when they accept work promotions with a pay increase or get a job with higher pay, even if it's still not enough to make ends meet. The benefits cliff dashboard was created by the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta Advancing Careers Initiative, or Atlanta Fed, who partnered with WFSA to tailor the tool, making it specific to the state of Arizona. This interactive tool depicts wages along select career pathways and pinpoints where individuals will experience loss of benefits as their income increases. The idea of losing benefits can be enough for individuals to refuse career advancement because the added income is not enough to cover the loss of the benefit. As a result, individuals may decline career advancement and wage increases to stay below the benefit eligibility threshold. For families, either decision can be devastating. This creates a significant barrier to economic mobility and self-sufficiency. This summer, WFSA partnered with 5 organizations and 113 participants to pilot the benefits cliff dashboard over a 12-week period. In addition to calculating changes in benefits, these organizations provided case management, offered financial and career planning, and provided wraparound services to offset the cliff effect. They helped individuals choose career paths, create timelines for education and training, and use the tool to predict when clients would experience a benefits cliff as their wage increased. Over the 10-week study period, our 5 pilot partners examined the use, strengths, and limitations of the benefits cliff dashboard to move individuals towards self-sufficiency. Our partners included Dress for Success Phoenix, JobPath, Sahuarita Food Bank and Community Resource Center in partnership with the Pima County Community and Workforce Development, Our Family Services, and Unlimited Potential Phoenix. The pilot research study also assessed the overall feasibility and usability of the benefits cliff dashboard tool, the efficacy of the dashboard in helping clients understand when they would experience a benefits cliff and how to prepare for the loss of that benefit, and the social and economic supports needed to offset the impact caused by the benefits cliff. WFSA and the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta Advancing Careers Initiative are committed to the research, seeking to improve the economic mobility and resilience by identifying how the benefits cliff and other structural barriers create financial disincentives to career advancement, conducting research, developing tools, and analyzing solutions on mechanisms for reducing barriers to economic mobility, and engaging in partnerships to support community and state efforts to improve economic security for families. We are grateful to the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta and our partners for being part of this eye-opening research study, and we look forward to releasing a comprehensive report in the new year. Partnerships like these are instrumental in moving the needle for economic mobility for women and girls in Arizona. The core of WFSA's research is our self-sufficiency standard. The self-sufficiency standard was introduced in 2018, informing Arizonans what the true cost to live an economically stable life in our state. We partnered with the University of Washington's Center for Women's Welfare to create the tool that is now in use with partners throughout Arizona. Joining us today are Annie Cooklick, researcher, and Lisa Manzer, director, from the University of Washington School of Social Work, Center for Women's Welfare, to discuss the updated 2022 self-sufficiency standard for Arizona. Throughout the year, Annie and Lisa have been updating the self-sufficiency standard for Arizona, including an interactive online tableau and full research report, which we are officially releasing today. Welcome, Annie and Lisa. Thank you for being with us for another awesome WFSA event.
Thank you for having us. Excited
Happy to be here. Thank you.
As you know, we are publicly releasing the updated self-sufficiency standard report today after our summit event. So how about we just jump right into some Q&A? How does that sound? So your team has been working on updating the self-sufficiency standard for the state of Arizona throughout the year. Can you give us a quick snapshot of what the self-sufficiency standard is?
I'll take that one. Yes. I think, the way I think about it is that we all generally know what we mean when we're talking about poverty. We think about individuals and households that don't have enough to meet their basic needs, households that are worrying about falling behind on rent or having their utilities being shut off, parents that go hungry so there's enough for their children, workers struggling to stay employed when their transportation is unreliable. But what we mean when we talk about poverty and what we mean when we actually measure are two very different things. That's where the self-sufficiency standard comes in. We try to address this disconnect between what we mean and what we measure by taking a more realistic approach than the official poverty measure calculated by the federal government. The standard was developed in the early 1990s by Dr. Diana Pierce. She was asked to design a performance measure for the goal of self-sufficiency in federal job training programs. Women were leaving these programs, typically as typists. Their incomes were above the poverty line, but they were still really experiencing hardships. So she was tasked with creating a measure that was realistic and detailed on what working families really needed to be self-sufficient, to define a measure of income adequacy, not income inadequacy. So to do this, the standard takes a market basket approach of measuring the cost of each basic need individually. While the poverty measure just includes the cost of food, all major budget items faced by working adults are included in the self-sufficiency standard. This is housing, childcare, healthcare, transportation, taxes and tax credits, and miscellaneous costs such as clothing and broadband. While the poverty measure is the same throughout the continental US, the standard accounts for geographical differences in costs. It varies in costs by age groups of children. So we're talking about infants, preschoolers, school age, teenagers, all having different costs. This is especially important for childcare, which varies substantially by age. Overall, the standard defines a realistic measurement of the income requirements for 719 different family types across each county in a given state. I do want to make an important note that the standard is calculated to be minimally adequate. The goal is to calculate the income that would be needed to just meet basic needs without public benefits such as SNAP or informal assistance such as childcare, help from a relative. And for that reason, it is a very bare bones basic needs budget. The default wages don't really have an added cushion to support long-term economic security, to survive a job loss or a broken down car without the potential risk of hardships.
Yeah, thank you for that great explanation. We've had the self-sufficiency tableau on the WFSA's website since our luncheon event in April. Can you tell us what updates have been made to this tableau?
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you about that. So the Tableau dashboard, as you know, that we had designed in partnership with you all at the Women's Foundation, visualizes the self-sufficiency standard. And it really allows for a user to get a more personal understanding of the data by navigating through their own county, through their own family type. It can be used by advocates who are looking to present a visualization of the self-sufficiency standard to their legislator. It's really meant to be a tool that is usable for people who are visiting the site. The difference that we made on this update is that the Tableau tool now has 2022 childcare data included in the calculation of the updated self-sufficiency standard. This is also the updated self-sufficiency standard that's being used to inform the report that is now released. Due to data collection lags as a result of the pandemic, the Arizona childcare market rate survey, which informs the childcare costs in the self-sufficiency standard, was not actually released to the public until July 1st of this year. So the new Tableau updated version has the updated 2022 childcare costs included. Now, childcare costs are important, and we really wanted to ensure that this data was up to date because childcare costs often take up the most significant portion of a family's budget, particularly if that family has young children. As an example, between the last childcare market rate survey in 2018 and now, childcare costs have risen by 24% for infants, 17% for preschoolers, and 50% for school-age children who attend childcare full-time during the summer and part-time before and after school. That's what is accounted for in the self-sufficiency standard during the school year. This is substantially more than even the inflation measures show, which only show an increase of 14% since 2018 for the childcare and nursery school CPI index. So it was very important to us to get that data up to date, and that is now reflected in the Tableau dashboard.
I appreciate that update. I know in addition to being incredibly helpful in understanding the self-sufficiency standard for Arizona, I've also received several comments about how visually engaging the Tableau is. So just thank you so much for creating this tool for WFSA. So how are other states or organizations using the self-sufficiency standard for their state?
That's a good question. And a lot of different ways. Really, the standard was initially developed as a performance benchmark for measuring the quality of jobs. Now it's used in all sorts of different ways. Many of our partners go beyond the question of just asking how much is enough, but they also want to know how many households are not making self-sufficiency standard wages. To do that, researchers at the center, we utilize American Community Survey microdata sets to understand who's overlooked and undercounted. That is, who's above the poverty threshold and potentially not eligible for benefits, but their household incomes are still below the self-sufficiency standard. So they're at risk of facing some real daily financial struggles. So that is one of the big ways that the standard gets used throughout the country. Also, as programs are moving away from poverty guidelines for setting income eligibility, more organizations turn to the standard. The state of Wisconsin uses the standard to determine income eligibility for federally funded workforce training. State of Colorado uses the standard for setting the income eligibility levels for childcare assistance. Portland, Oregon uses the standard for prioritizing slots in their free preschool program. Advocates and policymakers, they look to the standard for highlighting need as well as assessing the impact of policies. We've been working with the state of Connecticut to use the standard to model the impact of new and proposed health policy levers on residents, such as the premium tax credit changes that were extended in the Inflation Reduction Act, and policy changes such as their expansion of the state EITC. The standard's an important tool for determining the minimum families need to get by in a community. IKEA, for example, uses the single adult standard as an input into their wage algorithm for varying starting wages across the US stores. And then thanks to the advocacy efforts of our partners in New York, the city just passed a ballot measure that requires the city government to calculate a true cost of living. Overall, across the country, the standard is used to negotiate wage contracts and to advocate for higher minimum wages. In Oregon, for example, the legislature used the standard to set the current 3-tiered minimum wage that's in place in Oregon now.
Wow, that's fantastic. It sounds like so many of our, so many states are using the standard. And I just wanted to mention that all 50 states have engaged in the self-sufficiency standard work at some point. So I just really think that's a testament that many are realizing that the self-sufficiency standard should be the standard when determining wage income adequacy for self-sufficiency. So that's great. Thanks for giving us an overview. So I know, and many of our viewers know, that creating a robust but very clear to read report is probably not always easy. And so I just want to say thank you and kudos, because that's exactly what you all have done with this report. And I'm so excited for people to dig right into it. And so the next question is a two-parter. Can you highlight some key findings from the report? And also, a question that we receive a lot is, what about inflation? Could you give us an idea of how and if inflation is factored into the self-sufficiency standard report and also the tableau?
Yes, great questions. I'm happy to take that on. I'll start with the key findings for that. So we're really excited to release this report. Highly recommend going to the website to dive in and see some of the findings there yourself, but I'll go over a few of the key findings that we present in the report. So in Arizona, the amount needed to be economically self-sufficient really varies by geographic location. For instance, the amount needed to make ends meet for one adult and one preschooler varies from $20.01 per hour in Santa Cruz County, all the way up to $27.89 per hour in Coconino County, or from about 231% of the federal poverty guidelines to about 322% of the federal poverty guidelines for a family of two. For families with young children, the combined costs of housing and childcare typically make up the most substantial portion of a family's budget. We find this to be true across the United States, and it's also true in Arizona. For example, a family with 2 adults, 1 infant, and 1 preschooler living in Pima County, childcare costs 29% of that family's budget, while housing is 16%. The amount needed to meet basic costs of needs has increased significantly over the last 20 years, which is also featured in the report. It's increased in all Arizona counties. For a family of 2 adults, 1 preschooler, and 1 school-age child, the standard increased by 83% on average across the state. Additionally, Arizona has experienced some dramatic housing cost increases even in the last year. So from 2021 to 2022, the price of a 1-bedroom apartment increased 14% in Greenlee County, 12% in La Paz County, and 10% in Coconino County. The report also compares the standard to other earnings benchmarks. For example, for a parent who has a preschooler and a school-age child living in Yavapai County, this parent would be able to cover just 53% of that family's basic needs while earning a minimum wage job. This is after their take-home pay and accounting for taxes. Additionally, only 2 of the top 10 most common occupations in the Tucson metropolitan statistical area have median wages above the standard for a 3-person family in Pima County. Only registered nurses and operations managers have median wages above the self-sufficiency standard for a single adult with a preschooler and school-age child, which is about per hour. To get to the second question, the report and the data does factor in inflation. We use the most up-to-date information and data sources. However, if a data source, such as out-of-pocket medical expenses that's used in our healthcare calculation, is not currently up to date, then we will use the CPI inflation index specific to that cost to inflate it to the current month of data production. It's important to acknowledge that recently the country has experienced exceptionally high rates of inflation, really sharpening the financial strain for families who have already been dealing with costs rising and median earnings, particularly for low-wage jobs, staying relatively consistent. Previous standard research indicates that the cost of basic needs rise faster than general inflation measures reveal. This means that for low-income families, they deal with even more burdensome increases than indicated by the all items CPI data, which is the statistic that you typically hear. It shows an 8.3 increase for the CPI West region in September of this year. You know, as an example, the CPI for energy costs alone is 20.1% in that same region for the same time of September of this year. So low-income families in Arizona have been dealing with the cost of living rising faster than wages even before this period of high inflation. And these rapid cost increases now just really further aggravate the real but hidden economic crunch that these families are experiencing. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, I think we've all been, to the grocery store and have seen the increased costs just on food alone, not to mention all the other factors that are put into the self-sufficiency standards. So thank you for that. So my last question is, your team has focused on the self-sufficiency standard over the years, and you've released many reports throughout the country. Is there anything that makes this report unique for WFSA?
Yes, definitely. Happy to answer that. So every report has unique findings because we look at county-specific data for different family types. But I think what sets this report apart in particular is the input and feedback that you all got from the Women's Foundation Family Advisory Council. So throughout the report, when you go check it out, you'll notice pink quotations, and these are the added personal experiences of the council with the subject matter that we write about. Their voice is a really solid reminder that these data points are not abstract. They're not felt abstractly. These high costs are felt in a very immediate sense to people. Parents are having a hard time covering the rapidly increasing costs of childcare. The mental health of people struggling to get by on a daily basis is being compromised. And for people who are trying to work extra hours to help pay bills, jobs are just not wanting to pay overtime, and they're not wanting to provide extra hours for people. So the council recognized their own personal strategies of resiliency throughout this report, but there are other supports that are helping. In our report, we document that childcare subsidies, housing vouchers, which lower the cost of rent, SNAP, tax credits, all of these have an impact on a family's ability to cover their costs. In the section of our report titled Meeting the Standard, Reducing Costs, we document that a medical assistant who's earning $18.79 per hour can meet all of their family's expenses with the help of childcare subsidies, housing voucher, some food subsidy, and healthcare assistance. Without these work supports, the family is only able to cover 59% of their basic needs. So I would just wrap up by really giving a big thank you to the foundation, and particularly including the perspective of the Family Advisory Council throughout this report. Their input was really valued.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yes, I just want to echo that. Thank you to the Family Advisory Council participants for really bringing this, vetting this report, and for you all for incorporating their feedback and their experiences, because that's definitely something that WFSA focuses on, that our research is vetted by lived experience. So thank you. All right. I appreciate this time, Lisa and Annie. This is also exciting. Thank you for your partnership over the past years and just the time you've invested into learning about the state and getting these reports and tableaus together. I'm looking forward to sharing the updates with you, as we really get this report out and see how our partners are using the report, and I just really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Okay, now for our big public release. Right after the summit event, you can head over to WFSA's website at womengiving.org to download the updated 2022 Self-Sufficiency Standard Report. With the few minutes we have left, I want to give everyone a sneak peek into WFSA's 2023 research. We are currently working with the University of Arizona Community Research Evaluation and Development, also known as U of A CRED, to update the Promising Careers for Self-Sufficiency report. Last updated in 2018, we know a lot has changed. So what questions are we asking? Have there been shifts in wages and women's employment over the last 4 years? What are the 30 to 40 mid-skill, high-wage fields which are promising options for workers in Arizona that pay a minimum of $52,000 a year? And what are the recommendations on how to support women pursuing these mid-skill, high-earning jobs in non-traditional fields without the need for compounding certifications or education? In a nutshell, we want to know what has changed for women in the workforce over the last 4 years. What careers are women pursuing? Are those careers paying a self-sufficient wage? And what careers are paying a livable wage in this post-pandemic time? If you have found this data helpful, please consider donating to WFSA today to help us continue this all-important research using the donation button on the screen. Before we move to our next section, we would like to recognize today's presenting sponsor, Tucson Electric Power and Unisource.
We all want clean energy to protect our environment. We also need reliable energy to power our modern, busy lives. TEP's plan for a cleaner, greener grid means we don't have to choose. We're making our energy as clean as we can, as fast as we can, without compromising safety, reliability, or affordability. By 2035, we'll be providing 70% of our power from renewable resources. We're already on the right track with new wind and solar projects that will more than double our community-scale clean energy capacity. We plan to reduce carbon emissions 80% by replacing our remaining coal-fired power plants with wind, solar, and storage systems. That goal, developed in partnership with the University of Arizona, keeps us aligned with worldwide efforts to combat climate change. And since the transportation sector is the single greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions, we're helping our community make greater use of cleaner, emission-free electric vehicles. Clean energy is nothing new for TEP. We began building our first grid-tied solar array 2 decades ago, and we've been expanding our renewable resources ever since. Our plan for a cleaner, greener grid is ambitious and achievable. We know where we're going and how to get there. In fact, we're already on our way to a cleaner, more sustainable energy future.
If you have any questions throughout today, join our live stream chat. Use your phone to visit the QR code on screen or type the URL in a new browser window to join the live chat. Thank you again for joining WFSA today. Coming up, you'll hear from my fabulous colleague, Lori Sandonay, Chief Operations Officer, who will share how WFSA integrates our research into our innovative solutions.
Welcome! Live in studio, WFSA's Chief Operations Officer, Lori Sandonay.
Year, this particular research is critical as it considers variables such as family size and geographic location when calculating a self-sufficiency wage. So what does this look like in real time? For a single mother with one infant and one school-age child at minimum wage, she would need to work an average of 96 hours weekly to afford to live in either Tucson, Flagstaff, or Phoenix. Alternately, in Pima County, she would need to make $28.07 an hour with an annual salary of $59,279. In Maricopa County, she would need to make $31.72 per hour for an annual salary of $66,985. And in Coconino County, she would need to make $32.93 for a total of $69,543 annually. This research had led us to ask an all-important question. What career fields pay rates that meet the needs of single mother households, specifically those fields that will be in high demand over the next 5 years? This led to the development of the 36 career tracks. This took us straight into a 2-generation pilot program designed to equip single mothers with a technical certification in a career field that would guarantee an income that would meet the self-sufficiency standard. In 2020, WFSA received private funding to run a pilot of the Pathways for Single Moms program. This program covers full tuition, childcare, living stipends, and emergency funds for participants. Partner organizations provide support for enrollment, ongoing coaching, wraparound services, and job placement. In 2022, thanks to funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, WFSA was able to expand the program's reach beyond the Southern Arizona pilot. Thanks to partnerships with Dress for Success in Maricopa County and a Coconino Community College in Flagstaff, we were able to offer this program statewide to 200 single moms. Our partnership with Dress for Success in Phoenix has helped us accelerate access for women in the largest metropolitan area in the state. Let's learn more.
Well, I'm a single mom trying to be a role model for my kids and my family by going to school, and so yeah.
Our mission is to empower women to achieve economic independence, and we do that through various ways of support by providing styling and suiting for job interviews and for positions. We also have career development, we have professional development, and other programs throughout the valley that we offer to women.
The Pathway program for single moms is new to Dress for Success. Right now we are in the beginning stages of getting our first cohort in. We have 16 women already enrolled in the program. 6 of them already started their education and their courses last Monday. So we are very excited, and that's our proud moment right now. That's our proud moment.
If we're going to empower women, we have to develop programs that provide access like this one. So our Educate Her program is designed to provide access. You know, so often we talk about just getting through the door. So getting through the door is the access, but who holds the password? And that's what women need from us. They need the password. So once we can get them through the door and provide that access, then we still have an obligation and a responsibility to make sure those women have the password when they get there.
It's not only talking about, hey, I want to go into medical, the reason behind it. You know, explaining the reason behind it, looking at where you're at right now. Not only that, but like your lifestyle and your support system and what you have, and having realistic expectations of why you want to join it. If you're just joining it for the money, let's look at your passions. Let's do some career navigating, career assessment, and look at your passions and align them with that CLIPS benefit program, and learn about other programs that are in other industries that you may not have even known about, that you're like, oh my God, you know, that beam, the light bulb turns on in their head, right, when we talked about them. So out of the 6 that entered and started their coursework, 4 of them were not going into tech fields, and they are.
Last year, I received my certificate in logistics and supply chain management, but I didn't really feel like that was like a foundational career for me. So I chose to go into IT. And that was my original decision to begin with. And the Women's Foundation supported me in my decision. And they've been there every step of the way so far.
I remember where I was sitting when I received the phone call that the Women's Foundation wanted to speak with me. I had only been on the job about 3 months, and it changed everything. It confirmed the fact that it was a need. That's really what it was for me. It was confirmation that what I was thinking and what I was putting into place was definitely a need. And now I would have the funding to be able to carry that vision out.
Oh, Pathways, they mean everything to my future. They'll be the reason why. And I'll always be grateful. So I definitely will remember this for the rest of my life.
Thank you for your partnership and dedication to women in Maricopa County Dress for Success. The outcomes for this program are not only personal for the women in this program, we are also impacting the state budget in a substantial way. Our research indicates overall cost savings to the state budget of $20,000 a year for every family with a parent who completes the program. Finally, we are helping to set the national standard of how programs like this can scale and expand, serving needs in both urban and rural environments with the assistance of individual donors. We are able to increase opportunities for pathway cohorts to create a peer support community. Please consider contributing to our Pathways program via our donate button on your screen today. Pathways for Single Moms is not the only innovative solution that the WFSA provides. Our award-winning Unidas Leadership Program focuses on introducing philanthropy to students in Arizona. Joining us in studio today is my friend Daniela Maya, Unidas Program Manager, to share more about this incredible community program.
Thank you, Lori. It is so exciting to see the amazing outcomes of programs like Pathways for Single Moms. Before I dig into the Unidas program, I want to encourage you to join the live stream chat. Simply use the QR code on screen to join via phone or type the URL in a new browser window. We have staff online to answer any questions you may have about the presentation and throughout the rest of the today's program. Innovative programming is the real-life application of solutions designed to address the challenges and barriers we uncovered during our research process. Community is at the heart of how WFSA measures its impact. The Unidas program is our longest continually running change agent that introduces youth to the philanthropic process through a leadership and community building lens. Established in 2007, UNIDA counts amongst its alumni women who have gone on to leadership roles in their universities, community colleges, and communities. An after-school program, UNIDA teaches high school-age young women and gender-expansive teens about leadership, philanthropy, and social justice issues through their experience with grant making in their community. The UNIDA's program integrates the framework of research, advocacy, grant making, and innovative programming to create a holistic curriculum. Participants learn real-life skills such as consensus building, public speaking, community assessment, and core decision-making. The curriculum focuses on workshops that enhance participants' advocacy and leadership skill sets, advancing academic knowledge and promoting wellness. Participating teens work with a mentor to learn presentation skills, selecting a social justice topic to inform the cohort about their selected issue, and providing resources that connect fellow participants to opportunities to serve the larger community. The cohort works through the philanthropic process each semester, granting up to $5,000 to organizations that work to improve the quality of life for women and girls in Arizona. Past recipients of funding decided by UNIDA's cohorts include Mariposas Sin Fronteras, Equality AZ, Southern Arizona Gender Alliance, 100 Angels Foundation, Southern Arizona Senior Pride, Integrative Touch for Kids, Justice for Our Neighbors, Boys and Girls Club of Southern Arizona. The greater community has a stronger affinity for the UNIDA's program, and participants remain connected to WFSA and community organizations long after graduation. Let's hear from an UNIDA's participants why.
The UNIDA's program is an after-school program that allows teens to learn about philanthropy and grant making, and we learn skills such as leadership, community service, and relationship building. I learned about UNIDA's through my internship with the Women's Foundation for the state of Arizona. In a staff meeting, they had recommended me to join this program because I took interest in talking about different social justice issues, and I knew that in this program they have talked about this and that they award organizations with grants in order for them to fund for their mission. What UNIDA's means to me is making a difference in our communities through grant making and philanthropy and leadership and community service. My view of social justice has evolved because I didn't know that there were so many social issues happening everywhere, really. For example, in the program, we talked about discrimination in the workforce, racism in our schools, gender-based violence, and really, I just want to be able to talk about these things and make things better for these issues. What I will take from UNIDA's for the future is definitely the skills and the knowledge that I learned. I actually started to become more curious in women's awareness, and it's something that I would like to take a course in for college to help my career or the major that I want to study in. So I will definitely take in the leadership skills as well because I feel like it's helped me become more confident, and it actually has helped me with public speaking. Some things I would like to say for teens who want to start in social justice is to take the opportunities that are given to them. Young people could definitely make a difference. Working with other teens in UNIDA's is really important to me because we definitely take in consideration of each other's feelings, and we push each other to get off our comfort zones, but also keeping in mind our sensitivities and our capacities to these topics. So this program is called Unidas, which is in Spanish, that means together. And this relates to this program because we are a group of teens that come together and talk about things that matter to us. So yeah, we are engaged and somos unidas.
What an inspirational young woman. I am honored to lead the Unidas program. Our commitment to service and change by providing mentorship, agency, and empowerment to participants while holding space to address gender inequities helps transform alumni economic mobility, equitable interpersonal relationship, personal safety, and human capital as they establish their educational and career paths. And WFSA research highlights that promoting gender equality and women and girls' empowerment leads to better health and developmental outcomes. And now for the main event. Joining us today in studio is the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona CEO, Dr. Amalia Luxardo. Dr. Luxardo has been with the Women's Foundation since January of 2019, leading us through the launch of the Pathways for Single Moms program, our statewide expansion, and of course, a global pandemic. Her leadership has allowed the organization to grow exponentially and reach hundreds of thousands of families throughout Arizona. Join me in welcoming Dr. Amalia Luxardo.
Today's event is taking place on the stolen land of Tohono O'odham, O'odham Jewett, and Pasquayaqui Peoples Territory, colonized and now known as Tucson, Arizona. Connecting with this land and holding a moment of remembrance is one way WFSA practices decolonizing and unsettling the systems of colonialism that live around and within us. Thank you for joining us at the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona's inaugural virtual summit. During this next hour, we will hear from keynote speaker Nicole Lynn Lewis about her lived experience as a teenage mother and how it inspired her to take action to create better outcomes for young single mothers. But first, our CEO, Dr. Amalia Luxardo.
Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to WFSA's inaugural virtual summit. I am honored that you have taken time out of your day to join us in learning more about our work and the collective impact our research, innovative solutions, and community investment supports throughout Arizona. As a member of the leadership for this incredible organization, I am overjoyed to be part of a community that invests in women and girls of all identities in Arizona. While the last few years have certainly been a challenge, it's been inspiring to think about how, thanks to new ways of work developed during the pandemic, we have embraced technology that allows us to create community here online. I'd like to thank the crew at Creatista in Tucson for providing us with the expertise to broadcast our event online. Anna and Christian, you have been a joy to work with. Just a quick reminder that you can join us in our live stream chat by visiting the QR code from your phone or typing in the URL into a new browser window. And it's been really engaged, and that's exciting to see. Join other attendees sharing thoughts on today's event. Over 30 years ago, what started out as a small scholarship fund in Tucson by two courageous women is now the largest gender equity foundation in the state. Over the last 12 months, we have distributed more than $1.6 million to individuals and organizations, the largest milestone in our grant-making history, and we are only getting started. In a time of crisis, women and girls have continued to be disproportionately impacted. In fact, the World Economic Forum's 2021 Global Gender Gap Report found that as a result of the pandemic, closing the gap has increased by a generation, from 99.5 years to 135.6 years. And it is estimated that about 100 million additional children have been driven into poverty, a 10% increase compared to pre-pandemic levels. This increase could not have come at a worse time. With a Supreme Court stop decision, women and birthing people throughout the country have lost ready access to abortion care due to increased restrictions, and 11 states have lost abortion rights entirely. Right here in Arizona, we have suffered a complete ban until October, when the Arizona Court of Appeals agreed to block the enforcement of a pre-statehood law that criminalized the procedure. During this period, WFSA mobilized our network and staff to create the Century Fund. The Century Fund was created to respond to crises created by policy changes that negatively impact women and girls in Arizona. To date, the fund has funded over $100,000 to organizations and individuals. Funds could be used to support prenatal services, family planning support, or other vital services individuals need while experiencing pregnancy. In October, the Arizona State Court of Appeals blocked the enforcement of the pre-statehood law banning abortion. With that decision, pregnant individuals in Arizona can now legally obtain an abortion through the 15th week. And this is not our only success story. With your support, we have been able to remain nimble and respond to needs that our communities call for. We have moved from single-year to a multi-year funding model, ensuring that all of our grantee partners have financial stability. And we are in year 2 of the only Women and Girls of Color Fund in Arizona. Through the partnership with organizations, services were provided to more than 73,000 women, 61% of whom are women of color. Earlier today, you heard about Pathways for Single Moms, a program that aims to remove barriers that single moms face when seeking to further their education. Today, we are thrilled to share that we have officially expanded across Arizona and are working with partner organizations to enroll 200 mothers in order to rebuild our workforce and end generational poverty in their families. No one knows the impact of a 2-generation program like Pathways for Single Moms, as well as today's keynote speaker, Nicole Lynn Lewis. Mother, author, and activist, Nicole is a former teen mother who put herself through the College of William and Mary with her 3-month-old daughter in tow. She founded Generation Hope, a nonprofit organization that engages education and policy partners to drive systemic change and provides direct support to teen parents in college as well as their children through holistic 2-generation programming to ensure all student parents have the opportunities to succeed and experience economic mobility. Nicole is also a nationally known author and speaker with her critically acclaimed book, Pregnant Girl. Released by Beacon Press in the spring of 2021, Pregnant Girl was named one of NPR's best books of 2021. Nicole continues to work every day to change the statistic that less than 2% of teen mothers will earn their degree before age 30. Joining us from DC, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Nicole Lynn Lewis.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of the WFSA Annual Summit today. I'm thrilled and honored to be sharing the stage with other incredible change makers and to be in community with all of you, those who are working diligently on issues that matter for and with people who matter. and I especially want to thank the Women's Foundation for the state of Arizona and their fearless leader, Dr. Amalia Luxardo, for inviting me to be a part of today's conversation. In preparing my remarks for today, I thought a lot about where I should start, because the topic of the intersectionality between race and gender and poverty is massive and nuanced, and because the past 2+ years have been a painful reminder of the injustices and significant disparities that plague us. These disparities are not new. They didn't begin with COVID-19 or George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. They have always been there, just beneath the soil. But these events have intensified the inequities and made them harder to ignore and harder to overlook. For the people who have been most impacted, those who are always most impacted, Black and brown women and mothers, the recent days are much harder and full of much less light. And the darker the days are for them, the darker the days are for all of us. There is, of course, a path forward. Last year, I heard someone describe the role that each of us play in that path forward as being navigators of hope. So I think the place to start today is unpacking exactly what our call to action is as navigators of hope. There are many ways to interpret those words, many ways to define that title, but the questions remain the same. What must we do each and every day for people who are pushed to the fringes, who have been marginalized? What is essential to their economic mobility? And I came across these words from Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa, that I believe provide our call to action and our guiding star. He said, "Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and to a decent life." As navigators of hope, we are not saviors. We are not benefactors. We are defenders and protectors of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life that every human being, regardless of the color of their skin, their socioeconomic standing, their background, deserves. Today, 80% of single-parent families are headed by single mothers, and nearly a third live in poverty. Only half were employed full-time in 2021, and a quarter were jobless the entire year. Among those who were laid off or looking for work, less than a quarter received unemployment benefits. If a single mother is able to work, her earning power still lags significantly compared with men's, about 82 cents to $1 for the same job, leaving a wage gap of 18 cents on the dollar. The wage disparities are even greater for women of color. Black women earn only 64 cents, while Hispanic and Latinas are paid just 56 cents on the dollar. Among children living with their mothers only, 38.1% lived in poverty compared to only 7.5% of children in two-parent families. When it comes to education, the most powerful lever of economic mobility, only 1/3 of single mothers graduate with a college degree. I hear these statistics and I think back to Mandela's words. Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life. These numbers tell a story. They tell us that we have determined these women, these mothers, these families as being unworthy of this fundamental basic human right. I was 17 years old when I discovered my pregnancy during my senior year of high school. I was college bound. I had just been accepted into several different colleges. I was an honor roll student. I took AP classes. I was involved in a ton of extracurricular activities. I wrote for the school newspaper and the regional newspaper, the Virginian Pilot. My dream was to one day become a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. I didn't fit the stereotype of teen mother. And yet, the moment I discovered I was pregnant, none of those accomplishments mattered. Everything changed. I want to read to you an excerpt from my book, Pregnant Girl, that I think really describes this moment. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right after school. I'd paged my boyfriend and told him to meet me at my house. He had swung his Cadillac into my parents' driveway, NOS emanating from the gigantic subwoofers installed in his trunk. It was odd to be there together at this time of day. The house was quiet. The bright afternoon sunlight made patterns on the walls and on the furniture in the family room behind us. He stood next to me, smelling familiar. The shampoo he had used to wash his dreads that morning was still fragrant, and if I had dug my fingers into his scalp, I would probably felt his roots were still damp. The smell of Newports, and Black and Milds too, always on his breath and seeped into the fabric of his clothes. He was a mixture of sweet and bitter, endearing and repelling. I held the small white plastic square in my hands, and the two of us watched the pink line surface, light at first and then darker, like watching magic. Pregnant. A hot, fleshy, intense, aching feeling. That's what I felt, like someone had shot me right where the baby was supposed to be. I exhaled slowly, letting my chest sit empty for a moment, almost as if I was punishing myself. I needed to feel the physical sting of what had just ripped through my heart, the painful clarity that I was now instantaneously different, inherently bad, other. I was one of those girls eroding the American family and American society and disappointing everyone who ever cared about me. It happened quickly and without question or hesitation. The transformation from good to bad, from right to wrong, from destined to greatness to destined for failure. The moment, even in its swiftness, sent a shockwave through me and defined me wholly and completely. Without knowing it, I was feeling the impact of a president's words and a country's fears. It was 1998, just 3 years after President Bill Clinton, in his State of the Union address, called teenage childbearing our most serious social problem. Not the peak of crime rates in the early 1990s, which had been on the rise since the Lyndon B. Johnson presidency. Not the crack cocaine epidemic of the mid-1980s. Not the mass incarceration that exploded under President Ronald Reagan, decimating families and disproportionately affecting communities of color. No, young mothers were the greatest threat to our country. Those two pink lines meant that I was now an enemy of the state. I assumed teen pregnancy was always an epidemic because from the time that I was aware of these kinds of things, it was. There was no beginning to it, no emergence. It was understood and accepted as a perpetual plague. I would later learn that, like all things, there was a beginning. Teen pregnancy wasn't on the public's radar until the 1950s and 1960s, when teen childbearing reached its highest rates. Then President Jimmy Carter and nearly every president after him identified it as a priority of their domestic agenda, but it was President Clinton's proclamation that seemed to hurl it into overdrive. It didn't matter that at the time, teen pregnancy rates were drastically lower than 25 years earlier, nearly 50% lower. The national campaign to prevent teen and unplanned pregnancy was formed just 1 year after Clinton's State of the Union address. Poll after poll showed that Americans viewed teen pregnancy as a growing problem despite its overall decline. Money was poured into ineffective, fear-based teen pregnancy prevention campaigns that focused on shaming and stigmatizing young women. Few addressed the complexities of teen pregnancy, the issues that are often in place in a young person's life before a pregnancy, the negative assumptions about people of color that have pervaded our narrative and thinking on this issue, our own failures in working with families in poverty, or the basic premise that all young people should know that they matter regardless of their decisions. We don't value young parents. We don't tell them that they matter. We don't rally around them with supports and resources. We judge them, we punish them, we prescribe their destinies. We tell them that they will fail. That was true in 1998 when I found out that I was going to be a mom, and it's still true today. I felt the weight of these realities in that moment when the pink lines showed up. I felt undeserving of those college acceptance letters, and I doubted my ability to step foot on a college campus, not because I wasn't capable of earning a degree, but because there was no mechanism in place for me to succeed as a mother in college. And at the same time, I battled with the reality that education was my best chance at actually providing my daughter with a decent life. We know that a college degree isn't a magic wand, but it's definitely a game changer. This is the dilemma that I faced. It's the dilemma so many young mothers and single mothers have faced, and a dilemma they're facing right now. And this dilemma is the reason that less than 2% of teen mothers earn a degree before age 30. It's the reason the children of teen mothers are 10 times more likely to live in poverty. It's the reason that young single mothers have borne the brunt of the pandemic in their dual roles of breadwinner and caregiver. And they will continue to face this dilemma if we don't make changes. It's a dilemma that prevents too many mothers and fathers from even enrolling in college, and it prevents them from ever making it to the graduation stage. I knew what I needed for my family to thrive, but I also knew the odds were stacked against me. Still, somehow I began to envision myself as a college student, even as my belly continued to grow. So I began to take steps to enroll in college after I had my daughter. But this was a nearly impossible daily exercise because I was in a tumultuous relationship with her father. We were homeless for periods of time, sometimes sleeping in his car in our high school parking lot. And there were many days we went without eating anything. But the alternative to a college degree was enough to convince me that I had to at least try. College was now a means of survival, and I knew I had to do everything in my power to get there, no matter how far off it seemed. About 1 in 5 undergraduate students across the country are parenting, or 22%. When we look at the racial breakdown of those students, nearly half of all Black female undergraduate students are parenting, followed by 29% of American Indian, Alaska Native students, and roughly 1 in 5 Hispanic or Latinx students. And this doesn't include the millions of parenting students who have had to drop out because of the various hurdles to their success, including 71% of students who are single fathers. And the fact that student parents aren't completing at the same rates as other students isn't because of their cognitive abilities. In fact, on average, parenting students have higher GPAs than students without children. It's because of the systemic barriers to their success. In fact, those barriers make them 10 times less likely to earn a bachelor's degree within 5 years than students without children. For young parents, the statistics are even worse. Fewer than 2% of teen mothers earn a college degree before age 30. You heard that right, fewer than 2%. It costs Generation Hope, my organization, about $6,000 a year to help a young parent earn their degree. And research shows that when they graduate, they can earn $1 million more over the course of their lifetime with a 4-year degree compared to their peers with only a high school diploma. $1 million more. In my book, Pregnant Girl, I say William & Mary's lush green campus was only an hour away, but it felt completely out of reach, on another planet even. I would need a high-powered rocket ship or a miracle to get there. The reality is that there are no rocket ships. Less than 50% of mothers who are young even graduate from high school, and if they do, the vast majority of them will not earn a college degree. And even if they do earn a degree, they'll face discriminatory employment practices in the workforce that will make it that much more difficult for them to provide for their families. If they do step foot on a college campus as parents, they'll have 50% less time than their peers to devote to coursework. And they will have to navigate housing and food insecurity and the high costs of childcare, in addition to a higher ed system that wasn't designed for them to succeed. Because they're more likely to be Black, Hispanic, or Latinx, or Indigenous, they'll also have to overcome the legacy of racial oppression in this country that has fortified these obstacles to earning a post-secondary credential. Who sits at the center of the national student loan debt crisis? Who carries the highest amounts of student loan debt, higher than any other student group? Black student parents. The road to economic mobility is a hard one for parents. Each day I was so close to the cliff. I remember commuting 150 miles to drop my daughter off at daycare and get to class, praying I'd have enough gas and that the car wouldn't break down on the way. I remember nights with no heat when I'd have to bundle my daughter and I up in blankets to stay warm. I remember not being able to afford books for class because I needed to buy diapers. All of this while studying and writing papers and trying to get to class each day at one of the oldest and most prestigious schools in the country. In Pregnant Girl, I describe this invisible existence this way. No one at William & Mary knew that any of these things were happening in my life. Few people even knew that I was a mother. My advisor was an art professor whose office was located in the art complex on the opposite side of campus from where most of my classes were held. During our first meeting at the start of my first semester, I found him sketching in his classroom, annoyed by having to be pulled away from his work for our appointment. The one thing that sparked his interest was me mentioning that my sister happened to be his student during her days as an art and economics major at William & Mary. Our conversation revealed how little he knew about the English department, which wasn't helpful because I wanted to be an English major, and how little he cared about anything outside of his discipline. A couple days before our second meeting, he canceled due to an emergency and never responded to any of my requests to reschedule. In 2003, the year I will graduate from college, U.S. universities will average one advisor for every 282 students. 15 years later, when I'm working with young parents in college and when my own daughter is a college student herself, the ratio will be one advisor for every 375 students. The ratio at community colleges will be even worse, typically one advisor for every 1,000 students, and in some financially strapped institutions, it will be as high as 1 to 1,700. Most students won't earn a degree within 2 or 4 years due to a myriad of challenges, but strong academic counseling could serve as a lifeline, providing critical information, connections to resources, and emotional support, which might accelerate how quickly they're able to earn their degree. My program at Generation Hope will compensate for this deficiency, serving as academic advisors and life coaches to hundreds of teen parents working toward their degrees, but there will be too many students who will fall through the cracks without this type of support. More than half of students who are parenting, students like me, leave college without ever earning their degree. I was making the dean's list at William & Mary, raising a daughter, student teaching at a local high school to earn my teaching certificate, and working on an honors thesis, yet I wasn't sure if I could actually graduate because so many things were working against me. I was 8 months pregnant, hungry, and living day to day in a Motel 6 when I found out that I had been accepted into William & Mary. I started as a freshman when my daughter was a little under 3 months old, and I graduated with high honors 4 years later with her walking across the graduation stage with me. I was a rare member of the 2% of teen mothers who earn a degree before age 30. This experience led me to start Generation Hope in 2010 because I wasn't satisfied with how rare my success was. Thankfully, I came into my job as the CEO of a nonprofit organization that is committed to economic mobility for young families and for parenting college students, knowing firsthand what it felt like to be treated like I was unworthy of a college degree and of the basic and fundamental human right to a decent life. It may sound strange to be thankful for having to constantly prove my worthiness, but I'm thankful because those experiences have shaped me as a leader and influence every decision that I make. There is no better way to give you a sense of our work at Generation Hope and the importance of the work that the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona is doing for mothers than to show you. So take a look.
I think there's a stigma around young parents everywhere, and there's a quote from a report that was put out by the United Nations on global adolescent pregnancy. What they found in doing their research was that teen pregnancy or adolescent pregnancy is often the result of a lack of choices.
I happened to be 18 at the time that I had my daughter. Being a, younger parent, a single parent, a person who doesn't have a degree, who's not established in their career.
We are with our students for up to 6 years, and you are involved in really almost every area of their life. And that could be helping you find quality childcare. It could be helping you to get out of that domestic violence situation.
She looked out at the landscape and said, wait, no one's doing this. And that really surprised her. And she thought, well, if no one's doing this, I really should.
Their goal is to break the cycle of poverty, and it's a two-generation solution to poverty.
Generation Hope came to me at a time where I needed them the most. I didn't know that. So after I was accepted into the program, my grandmother died. And she was the person who helped me with my daughter so I could go to school. So I didn't know where that help was going to come from. And I sat on withdrawing from school. And I met with Caroline and my mentor, Aisha, and she said, no.
What students need is someone like Nicole and Nicole's team saying, no, here's a pathway around the wall. Here's how you leap over the wall. Here's how you go under the wall.
I like to look at their kids' faces when they're walking across the stage because that pride and that sense of like, my mom can do this and my mom can do anything, or recognizing that people's past don't define who they are now. Whether a parent is young or old or rich or poor, parents will do anything to help create a better life for their child.
It's about our students. It's about their potential and their kids.
Every day at Generation Hope, I get to do incredible work with inspiring students and families. We surround them with resources. We advocate for and with them. And most importantly, we get out of their way and we watch them shine. And the intentional wraparound support truly moves the needle. Our graduation rate is slightly higher than the graduation rate for all college students, whether they're parenting or not, 8 times the rate for single mothers and nearly double the rate for low-income students. The Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona is seeing similar success with their Pathways for Single Moms program because the basic premise is that we are not benefactors, we are navigators of hope, providing the resources that these mothers deserve to realize their full potential. A couple years ago, Generation Hope decided to expand our work to not only work directly with teen parents in college, but to also partner with colleges and universities to help them better serve parenting students. When I told people we were on a mission to transform higher education in this way, many of them said, higher ed is too difficult to change and too slow to change. My answer to them was, and still is, I've never seen a system that needs to change that's easy to change. It's going to take champions. It's going to take people like us, the people who make Arizona so special. We're the people who are going to need to drive the change, to innovate and to create, and sometimes to tear things down. We're all trying to figure out how to navigate our way out of COVID-19 as communities and as individuals. And it's a lot. It can be overwhelming to think about how to help mothers and children who were falling through the cracks well before March 2020. But I want to remind us of Mother Teresa's encouraging words. These are words that I go to when I feel the weight of all of it. She said, if you can't feed 100 people, then just feed one. We are here to improve the lives of others, and our ability in this moment to do the hard things for the people who have for too long been allowed to fall through the cracks determines whether or not we will leave this world better than we found it. I love the work of the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona because they're giving us a path forward in the midst of significant need. Each of us can make an impact on mothers across the state of Arizona. Collectively, we can dramatically improve the lives of so many. Right now, we have the opportunity to reimagine our systems in ways that remove barriers for this population and fuels that rocket ship that I talked about. We can design supports in partnership with the people who are most impacted. We can do more than listen to them, although that's an important first step. We can also consider them experts in how to implement reforms. They can and should be power brokers with us around the table. Last year, my oldest son started kindergarten, and one day during the first week of school, we were driving home from the bus, and I asked him what he did in school that day. He rolled his eyes, and he told me, the same thing we do every day. And I asked, what's that? And he said, with a very confused look on his face, we keep talking to this flag. For him, the Pledge of Allegiance didn't make any sense because he'd never done it before, and no one gave him a good reason for why he had to do it every day. For him, it was a strange daily ritual, whereas for me, someone who had spent my entire K-12 experience talking to the flag, I do it without question. Like my son, let's look at our norms with fresh eyes and with a new lens. When someone says we can't do something, let's ask why not. When someone says, well, it's always been done this way, let's ask if it has to be. Our ability to look at things with fresh eyes could be the difference between dinner on the table tonight for a family or a college degree in the hands of a mother. Before I go, I want to leave you with this excerpt from Pregnant Girl that describes my approach when founding Generation Hope, and I hope it inspires you in imagining your own role in creating a world that ensures everyone has the basic fundamental human right to a life of dignity and a life that brings them joy. What if we said yes instead of no? That was the guiding star in the design of our program. Yes to tuition assistance. Yes to helping you keep the heat on in the winter or fixing your car. Yes to having someone in your corner who believes in you. And let's make it multiple people. Yes to diapers and baby wipes and laptop computers for class. Yes to connecting with other young people who are going through the same thing as you, parenting, working, and going to school. Yes to having a champion when you're caught in a never-ending bureaucracy. And while we're at it, let's commit to never creating unnecessary barriers to our own supports. Yes to having someone to talk to, including a mental health professional. Yes to career connections. Yes, you are deserving. Yes, you are special. Yes, you are smart and full of potential. Yes, the world needs you. Yes to being loved and accepted and celebrated just as you are. I was unencumbered by restraints and norms. I didn't ask how much something would cost. I asked what the benefit would be if we made those investments. I didn't identify one issue and ignore the others. I tried to consider the totality of what I knew about being young and pregnant and try to solve for as many hindrances as possible. In addition to writing a check for tuition, we had to also address the isolation of being a pregnant girl or a teenage boy with a baby on the way. I didn't settle for surface solutions. I dug for the root causes. I tried to anticipate and offer services before a student had to ask for them. One less thing they'd have to think about in their busy days. I believe that if we remove barriers that teen parents face by providing targeted resources and designing an entire organization with their experience in mind, we would see success. I came to describe it as wanting to be a place that says yes when everyone else says no. My hope and my wish is for Arizona to be a place that says yes. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Your story is so inspirational to us all. Before we continue, I'd like to take this moment to give a big thank you to all of today's sponsors, with a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Tucson Electric Power.
We all want clean energy. TEP's plan for a cleaner, greener grid means we don't have to choose. We're making our energy as clean as we can, as fast as we can, without compromising safety, reliability, or affordability. By 2035, we'll be providing 70% of our power from renewable resources. We're already on the right track with new wind and solar projects that will more than double our community-scale clean energy capacity. We plan to reduce carbon emissions 80% by replacing our remaining coal-fired power plants with wind, solar, and storage systems. That goal, developed in partnership with the University of Arizona, keeps us aligned with worldwide efforts to combat climate change. And since the transportation sector is the single greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions, we're helping our community make greater use of cleaner, emission-free electric vehicles. Clean energy is nothing new for TEP. We began building our first grid-tied solar array 2 decades ago, and we've been expanding our renewable resources ever since. Our plan for a cleaner, greener grid is ambitious and achievable. We know where we're going and how to get there. In fact, we're already on our way to a cleaner, more sustainable energy future.
This work is more fulfilling than words can possibly describe. And what makes it all the more meaningful are the supporters who continue to champion WFSA's mission. Over the past year, members of our development team have been in discussion with donors across all levels of the organization. One thing has become clear. You have asked for a deeper relationship with WFSA. We are committed to moving our donor engagement away from transactional actions into transformational relationships. With the introduction of the Giving Collective, our Director of Donor Experience, Katia Jones, shares more.
WFSA is pleased to introduce you to our newest donor community, the WFSA Giving Collective. allow me a few moments to explain more about this innovative approach to philanthropy. Last year, as a part of our statewide expansion, the Women's Foundation for the state of Arizona also began a journey envisioning what WFSA would look and feel like both internally and externally. We took a deep dive into our mission, our vision, and our values to ensure that what we represent leads to an Arizona where women and girls of all identities thrive. Our values, found in the About section of our website, help to drive our Giving Collective initiative towards a new approach for donor relationships. Couple that with the stellar diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility training our organization is receiving, you will soon understand why we are pivoting from transaction to transformation when it comes to philanthropy. So what does this all mean? Well, thanks to the great folks at Community-Centric Fundraising, we have chosen to adopt a community-centered model of fundraising, which means WFSA is grounded in equity and social justice. The work we do for women and girls of all identities requires commitment to these areas. Therefore, our fundraising efforts must also include equity and social justice. Rooted in partnership. Being a WFSA donor should include a multi-directional relationship between staff, board, advocates, and donors such as yourselves. We will remain transparent, invite you for dialogue, and share our challenges and celebrations as one would in a community. Uplift nonprofit partnerships. Speaking of community, we also want to be vocal about our nonprofit partnerships. We want to speak from a place of abundance, meaning sharing space with others who also believe our state is a better place when women and girls thrive. So join us. The first step to becoming a Giving Collective member is to make a gift. Your contribution, regardless of the dollar amount, is your official invitation to the Giving Collective. We want you to have the opportunity to opt in with the understanding that our relationship will be different. We are looking for continued partnership, moments of celebration untethered to a dollar amount, creative spaces of education, and because we are who we are, a little fun too. Whether you are a first-time donor or a longtime supporter, you can join the Giving Collective today by filling out the form at womengiving.org/Giving Collective. Thank you for your time and for your support. Your partnership creates an Arizona where women and girls of all identities thrive.
Thank you, Katia. If you're interested in joining the Giving Collective, simply click the donate button on your screen to join today. As part of this new initiative, we are excited to announce our Giving Collective Keychain program. Let's see if all of my vlogger dreams are coming true now. I hope you can see this really well. Well, I'm getting lower now. So hopefully you can see it now. I know that the pictures that we have on the screen don't necessarily do it justice. It's designed to give our donors a daily point of pride, knowing that your support is invaluable to women and girls in Arizona. So after your first $100 investment to WFSA, you will be sent the Silver State emblem, which is really, really beautiful. And each of the other 4 charms represent one of our strategic priorities. Each of the charms can be earned through different types of engagement with WFSA. More information about this program is coming soon at womengiving.org. One of our strategic priorities is to remove systemic barriers facing women and girls through statewide policy change. WFSA remains the only women's foundation in the U.S. to write, run, and advocate to pass legislation developed in-house that levels the playing field. Earlier this year, we successfully passed legislation that helped to create and expand programs to support women and families across the state. We are proud to have a track record of advancing issues with bipartisan support, but also know there is still more work to be done. To talk more about our legislative priorities, please welcome Michael Abramson III, Advocacy Coordinator for WFSA.
afternoon. My name is Michael Abramson III, and I have the pleasure of serving as the advocacy coordinator for WFSA. No. I'll be sharing with you today foundation in the country to run our own legislation, founded on the research and program evaluation of our innovative solution programs. If you have questions about our advocacy efforts and legislative priorities throughout this session, simply use the QR code on screen to join our live chat via phone or type the URL in a new browser window. We have staff online ready to answer any questions you may have. Our advocacy programming takes a multidisciplinary approach, creating opportunities for WFSA to engage subject matter experts, state and local elected officials, and Arizonans with lived experiences in helping us build our legislative priorities. Today, we will cover just a few of the elements that help WFSA make community-based decisions in support of women and girls in Arizona. The WE Network, aka the Women's Equity Network, is our ongoing e-newsletter that allows subscribers to gain insight into the work we're doing along with opportunities to get involved. This past year, we've been able to use the WE Network to update members when we need their support to move legislation at the Capitol. This could be by signing into the Request to Speak system or ask them to contact their legislators to support bills using research-based talking points and data. Additionally, we have provided members with step-by-step guidance on how to add their name to a ballot initiative and in-depth voting guides during the recent midterm elections. Our WE Network members are among the first to hear about all of our legislative events as well. We encourage you to use the QR code on screen to sign up for the WE Network today. Now, for WE Network members who want to take the additional step and get further involved in WFSA advocacy efforts, this year we established the Advocacy Coalition. The Advocacy Coalition is an opportunity for advocates to work directly alongside WFSA staff as we prepare for the legislative year. For example, during the midterm elections, WE Network members received information regarding the election, while Advocacy Coalition members received in-depth analysis regarding various elected positions and ballot propositions from both WFSA staff and our partners at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs. Through coalition meetings, advocates are prepped with information and strategies to contact their legislators while developing a stronger understanding of the legislative process. Now, being the Women's Foundation for the state of Arizona, our goal is to have representation from across the Grand Canyon state within every legislative district. We invite you to become an Advocacy Coalition member today. Another important approach is our virtual legislative kickoff event, which will be held in January. This event will give attendees an opportunity to gain further insight into what WFSA advocacy will look like for the 2023 legislative session, along with an in-depth assessment of Governor-elect Hobbs' State of the State address. In addition to the legislative kickoff event, we'll be hosting our Day at the Capitol, which we are excited to announce will be returning to an in-person event at the State Capitol on March 8th. We will also host a legislative update event that will occur mid-session. We encourage you to sign up for our WE Network emails to be the first to know when to register for this exciting series of events. Our legislative activity has been successful over the last several years. In 2021, we ran and successfully passed HB 2016. HB 2016 allows an individual to continue to receive child care assistance while they pursue a full-time education. Without this bill, parents pursuing education would have to work a minimum of 20 hours per week in order to receive child care benefits, even while going to work at school full-time. In 2022, WFSA and advocates joined several community organizations to pass SB 1272, which extends access postpartum care from a mere 60 days to the next full year following birth. The United States has an ongoing maternal morbidity crisis that disproportionately affects women of color. There is a strong correlation between those maternal morbidity rates and a lack of healthcare coverage. Unfortunately, this also holds true for Arizona, where 80% of all pregnancy-related deaths are considered preventable. That is why 12-month coverage is a necessity, and SB 1272 has made that extension of coverage happen. WFSA's legislative efforts continued to positively impact Arizona families as we advocated for and successfully championed Healthy Families Arizona, a program that aids parents and caregivers, most of whom are mothers, get their families off to a successful start. Through a research-backed home visitation method, Healthy Families Arizona works with families who meet certain criteria, providing them the supports and education services needed at a time where infant development is at such an important foundational stage. Healthy Families Arizona was able to secure $10 million in ongoing state funding through the legislative and budgeting process. I could honestly rave about this program and the amazing staff that are behind it, but what better way to talk about this program and its impact than to meet with a successful participating family.
I came across Healthy Families the day after I delivered my 6th child in the recovery postpartum room. One of the representatives came in and told me about this program, and it was exactly what I was looking for. What made me want to participate in this Healthy Families program was 5 weeks prior to the Healthy Families representative. Her name was Margaret. Prior to her being in my postpartum delivery room, I had just moved to the state, and my husband was working long hours at a new job. I had 5 other children. I didn't really have friends, and I knew no one here. And Healthy Families program presented an opportunity, and one I felt I needed to take. It was to become engaged in the community. And I knew that if I was more engaged in a positive outlet, especially in a new community, I knew that I could find healing through this very challenging time of my life. Moving to the state, not having anyone, and having a new baby. And not just a new baby, it was a 6th baby. That was a pivotal point in my life. And I knew that I was in a dark place. I was in Arizona, but the Arizona sun was not able to reach the darkness of my soul at that time in my life. And so this program came into my life, and I knew that it was truly the answer. Some of the most helpful things that I had and have learned through Healthy Families is people come into your life for a reason, a season, and a time. We've heard that, but it was evident as I continued in this program. Each home specialist would come, and for the beginning, I had several, just because of different situations that they had to rearrange. And that was actually turned out to be the best, because I had such positive role models in my life. And each month I could gain more from somebody else. And so we did stay on the same curriculum, though it's a book called Find Your Gold Within. And in that book, it goes into personal goals. It goes into deep questions that allow you to realize, what are my purposes? What does give me joy? How can I improve, and not just improve as a general sense, but in a more categoric way of personal development. And through that program of the book, going each week, going through and setting goals, and then learning how to actually achieve those goals and stay on target and not get too distracted with other aspects of life, had sincerely helped me find more courage in myself. As I was able to attain those goals, I realized that I did have a lot of strength as an individual. I was able to see my life through a different lens. Healthy Families has impacted my future by gaining confidence to participate in my community. I found that once I was able to look outside of myself, and I was on the road to healing, I did want to become active in my community. And so they through their resources, were able to open that up for me. It was slow, and that is exactly how I wanted it. Once a month, there was an activity here or there. There were parent calls where you would go on Zoom, and you would, be on camera on Zoom. Sometimes that takes a lot, right? And I was able to have things on my calendar to do, to get myself outside of the house. And by doing that, I found more confidence and courage to serve within my community. When service projects had come, when there were opportunities that came, I actually said yes. I felt that I could do it. And I only gained more just peace and comfort and healing for my own self as I was serving others. Healthy Family has helped me navigate successfully through my own healing. I was able to, without guilt, address postpartum, the emotional, the psychological, the physical healings. There's a spiritual element in there. I was able to go through the program and not feel guilty that I wasn't focusing on the health of my children, because what mattered most at my time in my life was my mental state. And I needed to be able to be a full positive contributor before I could think about my 6 children. But they helped me find the tools and use the tools of, as I had said, goal setting, addressing situations where I felt inadequate or I felt incapable. Some of the barriers I had was, as I moved in, I was 5 weeks from having a baby. I wasn't lifting boxes. I wasn't even unpacking my house. I had other people come in and unpack my house. And as grateful as I was to them that they did that, my home was as if it was somebody else's home. And so as I healed physically and as I graduated to being able to move back into my home, I did it in a positive way. I was able to go through in a healthy state of mind to create a home out of this house that I was just transplanted into. The goals I have as I continue in this program are to continue to find ways to better myself and actually address the weaknesses of my character. For instance, I have kind of a fear of power tools. I have always wanted to feel confident in operating power tools. I have such a desire to create things that you would by using power tools. But as I go through this program, those types of things, the Find Your Gold Within book allows me to actually see myself through the different lens. Oh, I do have that fear. It's irrational, but let's address it. And then I have the support to actually kind of go back and say, hey, how is that goal? How are you doing? Healthy Families is a program that is birth to 5 years. So I have accomplished 1 year out of the 5, and amazing growth of confidence and character and emotional healing, and has come from being able to participate in the program. And I hope that as I have 4 more years, and as my youngest children in those 4 years, they will be going to school, and I will have more time on my hands. And so the skills and the character that I am developing in this program at this time, I hope that by the time that I do graduate this program, and that my youngest will be in full-time school at that point, back to the power tools, I will have the time and the confidence and hopefully the skill to accomplish something even greater than I am right now. There is a wide variety of community partners that provide resources, such as the diaper bank, such as, and that is what it is, you get diapers. which is a big help. There is a mystery box for reading. In that box you have you have books that come free to you and activities to engage your children while you're reading the book or after you read the book. There are parent nights where you yourself, with or without your children, can participate. You have day activities at the local parks here. You have the at-home visits that allow one-on-one constructive dialogue, and that's where you work on your personal goals and you address the thoughts that you have. Oh, my child's doing this. Let's look into this. Another thing is they have the ability and the funding for hearing and seeing tests or sight tests for children. And the list goes on, and I feel like this Healthy Families program allows us as a participant to have more resources at our fingertips and be more well aware, become a better parent, become a better citizen in your community. And that to me is all the reason why this program is an important program and why it should be more readily available to others. The importance of the family support specialist. It is that person who comes into your home on your one-on-one at-home visits. She's also the one who you would contact if you had questions or if you have suggestions. Like I have some older children. Do you have some, on our next visit, could you bring some activities for them or some learning milestones that we should be addressing for their age? And through these family support specialists, you have someone you can trust, someone that is non-biased with their personal views, but is there just to support you, your family, and to guide you and to provide you the most positive experience that you yourself and your family could participate in through this program. They also are the ones that deliver the diapers. They also are the ones that deliver the mystery reading box. They are the ones that invite you and give awareness to the additional meetings and activities and opportunities there are within the community. And that is why these home specialists are as important as they are. They are the facilitators, and they are the ones that really create a sense of belonging within the program. Healthy families should be continued to be supported, because if you're a first-time mom or a seasoned mom like I am, Healthy Families provides the resources that you need to first be the best mom, the best person that you can be. And as you create yourself to be your best, you give your best. And as you are rearing your child with your tools and your education and the knowledge that you are given, and you can practice that and create a healthy home. And as you create a healthy home, it just goes into your community, and it's just this beautiful circle. And I believe that the Healthy Families program is a program that allows the mom to focus on herself without guilt, because in essence, as she's her best self, she will emulate that and teach that and rear that. Healthy Families helped me heal in all the right ways, which in turn benefits not only my children, but all the citizens, young and old, in which I interact with daily. Healthy Families is a program from birth to 5 years. And in my opinion, the whole goal of the program is to create a healthy home, to allow the parent to gain the tools and education and knowledge, and then how to actually address them to their growing child. The first 5 years of life, most people know this now, is vital in development. And so Healthy Families is there bridging that gap of maybe a non-support. So they're providing support, they're providing love and care, they're providing diapers, books, they're providing activities of social engagement, they're providing just a vast variety of things on top of that. And it's all for the betterment of you as the parent, your child, and then as a community engagement. They really try to keep it as positive as possible and bridge the gap between not participating to fully flourishing in your local community.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing your experience so candidly with us today. I'm appreciative of how you so beautifully described that when Healthy Families allows you to better focus on yourself and the tools you need to successfully parent, it has a trickle effect, and the impact not only affects the immediate family, but the community within which you reside. WFSA and our advocates are proud to have supported the legislation that helped expand the program so that more parents and caregivers can be supported. WFSA is committed to expending the necessary resources to harness this momentum as we head into the 2023 legislative session. There is nobody better to share what we can expect after the recent midterm elections than our amazing partners over at Goodman-Schwartz Public Affairs. The Goodman-Schwartz team has been instrumental to WFSA policy work. They have leveraged relationships with changemakers, helping us make meaningful connections between our priorities and research in order to address gaps in legislative priorities. Joining us from Phoenix is Stuart Goodman, a co-founder of Goodman-Schwartz Public Affairs.
So I think if you look at Arizona in 2020, people called Arizona a purple state. I would call it more magenta. At the time, you had a Republican governor, you had a series of Republicans in statewide offices, you had a Republican-controlled legislature, albeit with a one-seat majority in both chambers, but they elected a Democratic senator. They brought Joe Biden to the White House. And so I think that's where the magenta comes in as opposed to the purple. And I think this election followed a similar path of what I would have expected based on 2020. I would also say that if you look at the conversations about who was elected in the Republican primaries. Now remember, these are low voter turnout elections. I think 35% of the electorate cast a vote in a primary. You had a very small percentage of independents casting votes in our primary. And so you had a series of statewide candidates on the Republican side that largely didn't reflect, I think, the broader Arizona population. It doesn't come across that way in legislative districts because those are narrow, focused areas, right? They're often non-competitive, with exception maybe 4 or 5 districts. So you wouldn't see that occur in a primary, in a legislative district. On a statewide race where there are no boundaries except the state boundaries, I'm not surprised that those elections, they were close, but I'm not surprised by the results because I don't think those Republican candidates that were selected in the primary were really reflective of the broader Republican Party, let alone the broader population in Arizona. So look, you've got a governor that inherited a $1 billion surplus. You have a legislature that is far more ideologically conservative today than it was yesterday, even though the numbers are the same, right? The last 2 years, there have been one-seat majorities in both the House and the Senate. But the ideological composition is much different. I see challenges in a new administration learning how to govern. I see challenges in a legislature that's never had to work with a Democratic governor, at least the vast majority of them. And I think there'll be growing pains along the way. That being said, these are professionals. These are good people, sometimes trapped in bad systems, and they will find a way out of necessity to work together. In fact, to some degree, it might actually be easier. And what I mean by that is I'll use the budget as a good example. This past session with a Republican governor, Republican legislature, the Republicans couldn't get a budget amongst themselves. They had to go to the Democratic store and develop a really bipartisan budget. That was challenging for leadership because you had enough folks on the Republican side that did not want to negotiate with Democrats. Fast forward to what we're going to see in 23 and 24, and actually 2 years after that for that matter, what you're seeing is by necessity, because of a Democrat in the governor's office, leadership is going to have to work with their Democratic legislators and create a bipartisan budget out of political necessity. In the long run, as clunky as it's going to be getting there, it's going to be better for everybody. No doubt there'll be bills that will be introduced, whether it's on non-discrimination issues, on abortion, or a series of other conservative social causes. I think those bills get hearings. I think some of those bills may even pass out of one chamber, may even pass out of two chambers, as they're trying to test this Democratic governor, as they're trying to test some of their colleagues. Do I see them being enacted into law? No, I don't. I think you have with Governor-elect Hobbs, soon to be Governor Hobbs, you have a backstop against those sort of bills. And over time, I think they'll stop testing her. But at least for the foreseeable future, I think what you'll see is those bills introduced, they'll make some level of progress, but ultimately they're not going to become law. So I look at Democratic priorities in terms of safety social nets, in terms of education, those sort of significant issues that really shouldn't have a partisan tone to them, but the reality is that they do. I think over time, over the course of the session, as both parties figure out how to work together, to coexist, I think you'll see solutions. You know, if you go back to 2015, and Governor Ducey, it's his first term, you had a brand new Senate and brand new House of leadership. And what you ended up having was you didn't have a separation of powers. You had a parliament, right? And ultimately, then the governor's office largely yielded to what then Senate President Andy Biggs wanted to pursue. And several of those issues had to be rolled back the very next year. With divided government, I think that forces a more thoughtful approach to governing. It forces both parties to give. It forces compromise. It forces moving some of the extreme issues out of the way and focusing on what is achievable. And I think at the end of the day, again, I've used this term before, as clunky as it will be, and I guarantee you it will be clunky, the end result will likely be thoughtful changes in our policies that benefit Arizona residents. Look, I think staying involved and staying aware is critical, but there's also a mechanism, right? The legislature has as a portal that allows individuals to register their support for and against legislation. It doesn't require you to speak. It's more of a amen chorus, either for or against. Being part of that's critical because those sheets stay with the bill throughout the entire process. And I do think legislators are impacted when they see a long list of individuals for or against the bill. I think that has an impact. And that is the easiest way, the most convenient way. You can do it remotely, to have an impact on legislation. Having divided government, I think, is important in how it forces the extremes on both sides of the respective aisle to reach a compromise. You know, we often take policy, right, and we look at the ideal. But the art of politics is taking the ideal and sacrificing it for what's achievable. And I think that's a lost art. And we haven't needed to use that art in Arizona because since Jan Napolitano, you've had largely single-party rule, and you've had some very good governors, you've had some very good legislatures. But I think having the forced compromise of differing views to achieve really desired common results, I think that makes us better. And I think it gets lost in that. And look, at least for the next 2 years, we're going to have this sort of dynamic. And I think that's important. I also think, and going back to the primary, that for those that are Game of Thrones fans, it was a red wedding. You had both parties really purging their moderates within their own parties, right? Conservatives on one side, certainly moderate Democrats on the other side. And so I think that now you have an ideologically different type of legislature that is going to have to find common ground. Look, when I was a baby lobbyist 30 years ago, we talked about Republican moderates as good on taxes and pro-choice. That's the easiest way to describe it. Today, there are no moderate Republicans based on philosophy. They're all conservative. But when we talk about moderate Republicans, we talk about not their philosophy, we talk about their personality. Can you work with them? Are they good individuals? Can you sit down and have an honest debate without being blackballed on every other issue you might work on, right? That has now the Republican moderate. They're all ideologically conservative. And so that's been a huge change in how they govern, and how we legislate, and how they implement. And so those are changes that for the system, when you now have a well-seasoned Democratic governor, you know, Governor Hobbs will have served, over a decade in the legislature, plus her time as Secretary of State, right? She is well-seasoned. She will develop a team around her that is equally well-seasoned. And you've got a legislature that has, almost half the House are brand new freshman members that have never served before. That's the dynamic, the push and the pull that makes the process, at least the next few months, a little bit clunky as they all sort of get their traction and figure out how they're going to work together to solve common problems.
Thanks, Stuart. We always appreciate the opportunity to hear your in-depth perspective on Arizona's political landscape. It is helpful to understand how our state government can function with a Democratic governor and Republican majority legislature. I can already tell we have an exciting legislative session ahead of us, and we're excited for our continued partnership. With my final few minutes, I would like to close out by providing you with insight on how WFSA will proceed to pursue our goal of gender equity through our legislative priorities. As always, we continue to be committed to eliminating gender-based taxes that disproportionately affect menstruating people. We know that access to feminine hygiene products is essential in order to attend school, work, and participate fully in daily life. It is affirming to note that our aim of alleviating some economic stress was also something that was highlighted by Governor-elect Katie Hobbs, and we look forward to working in tandem to see hygiene tax legislation come to fruition in Arizona. It cannot be overstated that WFSA's mission is to create social, political, and economic mobility, and this session will have an emphasis on the economic mobility piece. Arizona is one of the lowest ranking states when it comes to passed legislation related to addressing the gender pay gap. Wage inequity deeply affects how women are able to support themselves and their families. This is an area WFSA will continue to address. And just as we supported the expansion of postpartum coverage, this legislative session We'll also support legislation that increases social and economic supports to achieve economic mobility for women of all identities. And of course, as Stuart mentioned so eloquently, there is still a chance that harmful bills may show face again in 2023, albeit with important stopgaps along the way. With this understanding, WFSA will continue to balance our priorities with our values. This means that we will run and support legislation that aligns with our mission, and we will oppose legislation that creates barriers for gender equity. Now, before we move to our last segment of today's events, we would like to take one final opportunity to thank today's presenting sponsor, TEP and Unisource.
We all want clean energy to protect our environment. We also need reliable energy to power our modern, busy lives. TEP's plan for a cleaner, greener grid means we don't have to choose. We're making our energy as clean as we can, as fast as we can, without compromising safety, reliability, or affordability. By 2035, we'll be providing 70% of our power from renewable resources. We're already on the right track with new wind and solar projects that will more than double our community-scale clean energy capacity. We plan to reduce carbon emissions 80% by replacing our remaining coal-fired power plants with wind, solar, and storage systems. That goal, developed in partnership with the University of Arizona, keeps us aligned with worldwide efforts to combat climate change. And since the transportation sector is the single greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions, we're helping our community make greater use of cleaner, emission-free electric vehicles. Clean energy is nothing new for TEP. We began building our first grid-tied solar array 2 decades ago, and we've been expanding our renewable resources ever since. Our plan for a cleaner, greener grid is ambitious and achievable. We know where we're going and how to get there. In fact, we're already on our way to a cleaner, more sustainable energy future.
Thank you for joining us for today's virtual summit. Welcome for our final segment on community investment, WFSA Vice President of Community Impact, Chloe Silva.
Thank you for joining us for the last segment of our inaugural virtual summit. As one of the newest members of the WFSA team, I'm honored to be here today to share the magnificent work that our grantee partners have demonstrated over the last year. Our grant making focuses on 2 core funds, Annual Giving and the Women and Girls of Color Fund. These programs provide low barrier general operating support, and in fiscal year 2022, we funded 10 organizations. As part of our grant making program, WFSA provides professional technical assistance, including marketing and promotional services. Today, we unveil videos produced by WFSA on behalf of each of our grantee partners. Our Annual Giving Fund recipients include Community Investment Corporation, Planned Parenthood Arizona, Innovation for Justice program at the University of Arizona James E. Rogers College of Law, Chicanos por la Causa, and Emerge Center Against Domestic Abuse. I'd like to invite you to learn a little more about each one of these organizations and how WFSA's practice of trust-based philanthropy has enabled these organizations to focus less on extractive data gathering and mobilize more resources towards their respective missions.
So Emerge's mission is to make sure that everybody in the community is safe and has a life free from abuse. And that means that we work with people who not only come to Emerge for services, but our job is to also to make sure that all survivors of abuse in the community have more safety than they do today. Part of that is responding to their needs today and making sure that we provide crisis services and support services to those folks who are experiencing domestic violence now, as well as their family and friends and folks who care about them. But it's also about making sure that we work with the entire community to change the status quo, to change our culture and the socialization that creates domestic violence. So that means really our mission is to work with the whole community to make sure that everyone in our community is safe.
So the community that we serve are victims and survivors of domestic violence. It's a diverse community with many different backgrounds, cultures, intersectionalities. So our lay legal advocacy is, we have a lay legal team who provides guidance to our participants around the criminal and civil justice system in different ways, helping them navigate that system and providing different emotional support as well, and just providing different information about the process of the legal system.
For us, trust-based philanthropy is what allows us to have trust-based service delivery. We do not know what our participants need more than they do. So when they tell us what they need, we have to have the flexibility and adaptability in order to provide that specific survivor what they need to be safer. And when we have trust from our funders, like the Women's Foundation, then it gives us that flexibility to respond where the greatest need is at any given moment, which is changing constantly.
I think the impact of using trust-based philanthropy is that it allows us to focus on the cases that we're doing and how also Emerge goes about doing a certain process. So I think that kind of not having that restriction allows us to really focus with the participant instead of focusing on other things that when those restrictions are in place.
What helps us drive our mission is people simply talking about the issue. It's something that's very uncomfortable for folks to talk about, but it's that silence that domestic violence thrives in. And so we need to make sure that our community is willing to have difficult, uncomfortable conversations. We've got to make sure that we're willing to offer survivors that we know, victims that we know, the help that they might need. Today, we need dollars to make sure that we are meeting the crisis and support needs of victims of domestic abuse. But one day we want to be out of business, and the way that we do that is by having our community, our donor base, willing to do that hard work that is about how do we undo the status quo and the socialization that lets abuse even exist.
So the mission of Geo Health Connection is to help individuals and families get enrolled into healthcare and other community resources. We provide free application assistance bilingual in Spanish, English, over the phone or in person for access, kids care, cash assistance, food stamps, and also the marketplace. We serve anyone who needs assistance in enrolling into healthcare. Primarily, the Hispanic community is one of the biggest population that we assist at this time, but again, we can assist anyone. So last year, the Women Foundation awarded Geo Health Connection $65,000, which has allowed us to expand our services to Tucson, provide a lot of more outreach, which brings more visibility to our program, and a lot of more clients that we can assist. Well, COVID-19 is still a challenge for us. However, most of it is having that availability for in-person for still those community members has been a great challenge, but we've been able to still provide those services and even expand our hours of operation. And again, expanding to Tucson in-person has helped us tremendously. Well, now we have in-person services, so we have a navigator who is able to help in person Monday to Saturday, also some evenings at our immigration office as well, our Chicanos por la Causa immigration office in Tucson. The partnerships that we have established, not just here in Arizona, here in Arizona, but also not just in Maricopa County, because before that was our majority sources of outreach, but now when we're in Tucson, we work with the Sheriff Department, we're working in there with the farmer market up there as well, the food banks, establishing those partnerships and already spreading the word that Geo is there. It's one of the, I would say, the sources of accomplishment that we've had. Geo, our staff members and our families who we help on a daily basis, would love to thank the Women Foundation for investing in us and allowing us to continue to do our work out in the community and supporting our clients.
So Innovation for Justice is a lab at the University of Arizona College of Law, and there's also a lab in Utah at the University of Utah School of Business. And the labs have students work closely with community members to identify areas in which there are access to justice issues, and then develop a plan to creatively address those issues. And sometimes that involves technology, sometimes it involves policy reform, like what we did with the licensed legal advocate pilot. The issue we're working on with the licensed legal advocate pilot is to better serve survivors of domestic violence who may otherwise not have access to legal advice in order to leave a domestic violence situation. The funding from the Women's Foundation has been extremely helpful in allowing us to continue the program evaluation. Due to the pandemic, we weren't always able to run the program as we initially had expected. So having the additional funding from the Women's Foundation has allowed us to continue with that data collection and be able to run the program evaluation in the way that we had hoped. So if I could ask anything from the community to help with our mission, it's to continue to collaborate with us the way that they have. We work really closely with community members in developing our projects, especially like, for example, with the licensed legal advocate pilot. We worked really closely with attorneys, the Arizona Supreme Court, Emerge, and their legal advocates, as well as the survivors that the project is trying to serve, and as well as others. And so having that support and having the contributions to how the program develops has been critical in creating a successful pilot.
Planned Parenthood's mission is to promote and protect every person's freedom and right to enjoy sexual health and well-being in order for them to make reproductive choices and build healthy and strong families. Over half of Planned Parenthood Arizona's patients are people of color, Latinx, Black, Indigenous, AAPI, and multiracial. Many of our patients are Gen Z or millennials, although we do serve people of all ages, right? The majority of our patients also identify as women, and although we also serve people of all genders, but we are a trusted provider for the LGBTQ community and immigrant community, regardless of immigration status. So trust-based philanthropy allows our teams to center the needs of our patients and really focus on making an impact in the community rather than centering the needs of gathering data for a report. So allows us to truly meet our communities where they're at. It also allows our teams to holistically feel supported by the Women's Foundation, State of Arizona, in the work that we do, not just a portion of our work that was funded. Since receiving this funding, we have been able to further meet our communities where they're at. We've been able to host events, virtual meetings online or out in the community, being able to also develop discussions and spaces to educate our community members about the current state of abortion, but just overall access to reproductive health care in our state. As you all may know, this specific landscape around reproductive health care continues to change, and it's more important now than ever that our community is fully aware of what is accessible to them and what can they do in order for them to access the care that they deserve and that they need. We knew the unraveling of Roe would precipitate so many ripple effects, pausing abortion services, interruptions in medication delivery, unrelated to pregnancy or abortion, the surveillance of pregnant, capable people, and even more, right? And so I think it's just a challenge that we need to acknowledge and we need to face full head on. People can only make their best and most informed decisions when they are fully informed. And so this includes not just biological facts, but also continuing support for a world where consensual conversations are happening, sexual negotiations and pleasure are part of the human experience. And so it's just important for us to acknowledge and balance the fear responses with positive interventions and reminders in this, ever-changing landscape in reproductive rights in this moment, but just across the board and moving forward.
Community Investment Corporation, our mission is to give access to the entire community to our economy and its full benefits. The economy works for a lot of people, but it leaves too many people out. So we work with people who have been historically disenfranchised, historically underserved, especially by capital access institutions. We have three main pillars. We try to work with people to build assets through homeownership, education, and entrepreneurship. I've worked in nonprofit for 20 years, and the impact of being able to work with a foundation that uses a trust-based approach means that they've looked at your organization overall and vetted you. They see what it is that you do in the community, and instead of asking us to report on every dollar spent, they give it to you with the trust that you are going to continue, augment what your services are, increase your impact. It allows us to do what we do well. It's the fact that we are the experts at what we do, and allowing those experts to take the money and use it for its highest and best use in the work we're trying to do. The progress since receiving the funding from the Women's Foundation has been it's been a sea change for us. The first time that we launched the BIPOC Community Managed Loan Fund, we only had enough to do one cohort, and what this has allowed us to do is actually open up the loan fund so that we're actually approving loans every month now. We have the BIPOC community who has actually created the loan program that we have. They're making all of those decisions. Community Investment Corporation, for our part, is really just an administrator. We do the origination and servicing, but all the decision making has been turned over to the BIPOC community. This idea of having the community that you're trying to serve actually have agency, have the decision making power in how they are best served. Our biggest source of pride is that this was a response to the murder of George Floyd, that our organization, our staff, wanted to do something different. Economic justice is what we fight for. We think it's imperative that there's economic justice to have racial justice. Our staff, 14 people at the time, donated the first $2,700 to this program. Since that time, including the investment from the Women's Foundation, we are up over $360,000. We've seen the community rally around what it is that we've put together to make it bigger, and we hope it will be a perpetual and sustainable asset for our community to always be supporting BIPOC entrepreneurs.
Thanks so much to our grantee partners for remaining so dedicated to delivering quality programs and services to women and girls throughout Arizona. In 2021, the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona introduced the first fund solely dedicated to supporting organizations led by women of color and serving women and girls of color. This first cohort of organizations to receive funding throughout this initiative are some of the most innovative, community-focused organizations we've ever had the pleasure of funding. From Indigenous wellness practices to bringing girls of color into outdoor spaces, from providing domestic violence services in South Phoenix, to ensuring Black, Indigenous, and people of color have access to free legal services, these organizations are creating opportunities for girls and women of color while enacting equity in program delivery. Our fiscal year 2022 Women and Girls of Color Fund grantee partners are YWCA Southern Arizona, Cihuapatli Collective, Beyond the Hurt, Phoenix Legal Action Network, and Black Lives Matter Phoenix Metro. Let's hear more from our partners about how they've been able to leverage WFSA grant funding in service to their missions.
At the YWCA, we're on a mission of eliminating racism, empowering women, and doing justice. The community served by the YWCA is a community of promise and women making an impact. We are working with women and helping to build their self-advocacy through leadership, because our women demonstrate leadership whether it's in their own families or in their communities. The impact of trust-based philanthropy is huge on a nonprofit, because the trust is given to the nonprofit to know what's best and how to invest those resources back into the needs of the community. And it's really about a partnership of collaboration, where together as a donor and a nonprofit, we get to impact the community that we strongly believe in and belong to. The progress that has been offered to us in receiving trust-based funding is lending the opportunity to our participants beyond the program services, giving them the experiences that they otherwise may not have. And so exposing them to these experiences as part of learning and leadership, and being, for us at the YWCA, it was also expanding to service the needs of younger women. Both a challenge and a sense of pride has been the getting to know each other, kind of together finding our new normal after the pandemic, or what we may still be going through. And so the realization too of looking at equity, and what does equity look like for us now that we've had the experience of navigating through this challenging time together. We've also learned that this is hard work. It's not easy, and that we need to take care of ourselves emotionally and psychologically, and that we need to be able to create the resources and the platforms for ourselves doing the work, but also for those participating in the work. We get to work alongside a community of promise and women of impact. We get to work with women leaders that are leaders in their own rights, whether in their families and in their communities. By walking alongside our women and their families, we hope to build a future of self-dignity and advocacy. That is our vision. At the YWCA, we're ready. We've learned so much, and we're not taking no, or this is the way it's been done, as a complete answer.
Immigration as an experience is not a monolithic one. There's so many different experiences and so many different stories when it comes to immigration. So at PLAN, we are trying to promote immigrant justice in Arizona. We aim to provide free legal services and representation to non-detained and documented folks in Phoenix. We also want to grow legal knowledge, not just with lawyers, but also within our community and within those immigrant spaces. So we partner with different partner organizations like Trans Queer Pueblo, Aliento, Poder in Action, where we host curriculums to share legal knowledge depending on what their communities need. And then we also aim to connect our clients with those immigrant-led organizations to foster that community power that we're hoping to grow.
PLAN is a small organization. We're just 2 staff people. Flexible, unrestricted funding, general operational support like we receive from the Women's Foundation allows us to move money where we need it most to ensure that we can keep our programming, continue to pay our staff when grants or other donations that are restricted don't completely fill that gap. This 3-year renewable grant from the Women's Foundation has really given us some sustainability to be able to expand. We are a client community-based organization, and we need to be able to meet with people. And so having this physical space in this co-working space that we rent has been critical to allowing us to rebuild and reinvest in our community and client relationships.
We serve undocumented folks and family, primarily those who are low income, because we are trying to give those services to people who are not able to afford representation or any assistance in legal proceedings. 98% of our clients and the people we support are people of color, and more than half are women. So a lot of the time we're working with people who, have families and are working and been part of the community for a long time. So we're just trying to help them get representation and support where they need.
We now have been able to really invest in our values, which is to make sure that we have a greater voice for immigrants in our organization. Both Giselle and I identify with the immigrant experience. We are daughters of immigrants and women of color, and our board has similarly had that shift. Our board is now a majority women of color, and the majority identify with the immigrant experience, either being immigrant themselves, children of immigrants, or growing up on our borderlands. And so with this funding, we've really been able to not only expand our board and our staff and our work, but really to be able to actualize our values of centering immigrants in our organization.
Beyond the Hurt is a nonprofit organization. We empower single mothers, at-risk youth, and domestic violence survivors through education and resources to help promote a healthy individual. We really focus on trying to increase education. We want people really to get out of the mentality that they need the government to succeed. We want them to really understand that they have the power within themselves. And so we want to pull them out of the mentality, especially of being, feeling that they're trapped, feeling that they are hopeless, and we want to show them there is a better way. The longevity starts with really a more emotional aspect of it. That's why it's called Beyond the Hurt. Now, I'm going to get over all the hurt that was in my life. And because I can get over that, I don't have to make rash decisions. I don't have to make decisions out of desperation. But because there's no hurt in me, I can move and make very sound decisions that will impact not only myself, but my family. I think a lot of organizations that, like mine, that are smaller, they have been through a lot of things. That's why the passion is so great. So the community is not a number. It's not someone that they have to put on the list that they showed the government that they helped. Because I've been through a lot, I'm really serious about helping that woman up. The same woman that was like me, that had children, that after a divorce is trying to make it, working 3 jobs. And for the funding to come on a trust-based level, again, that's extremely big for us, and it helps me again and motivates me to move forward even more to help out the community.
In a tagline, the Siwa Patli Collective supports urban Indigenous families from womb to tomb. That we do that under 4 bundles. So the first one is cultural revitalization and education. Birth equity and reproductive justice is our second. The third is food justice and land restoration. And the fourth, advocacy and consultation. So we have the Collective Birth Fund, which the way that started was because of the closure of the Phoenix Indian Medical Center's labor and delivery unit. We had applied for a grant related to birthing support prior to even knowing that was going on. And we were able to immediately implement it to allow folks to have the culturally responsive, culturally appropriate birth that they wished. Through the Collective Birth Fund, which is now coming on 3 years old. It started in 2020 during the pandemic, so that was another layer to this, right? We're all home, right? Folks aren't trying to have a lot of interaction with people. They're figuring all this out when they feel really lonely. We started also realizing that we were supporting just as many Black families as we were supporting Indigenous families. It's lovely to see the evolution of our organization serving really BIPOC families more than just only Indigenous families. So the way that trust-based philanthropy helps us more efficiently administer dollars and services is that when you center humans, right? When you center a relationship, you can't fake that in any aspect of your work, whether it's with your funder or whether it's the community that you're serving. So if that leads, then you get to be a person, you get to be a human, you get to be in their world, right? You get to provide information, services, funding, conversations in the ways that are suited to an individual. And when that is centered, then you have to spend less money on maybe doing something that's centering something that's maybe a part of a system that's not serving anyone, and I say anyone, the funder, the organization, or the family or the community. And we get to kind of do a little bit more of our own data collection, of our own information to kind of understand who's being served. When we have less restrictions on administering the funds, we also get to create a different relationship with those that we're funding, where we get to talk to them more, because we don't have to do things like ask them the questions, you know, are you receiving this aid? Are you doing that? We will get there in a conversation. We get to lead with a relationship instead of leading with data. Through, in this past year, right, having just a more inclusive community, you know, that's centering and including Black and Indigenous families, we're getting to see that we're serving communities and birth workers that are like, I needed this space. I was always doing the work, but I was doing it by myself, right? I didn't know that that's what I was doing, meaning using a whistle to do some birth work, and that's what it was called, and that this is the story that my grandma had shared with me, right? And or a great grandmother, or knowledge that our family had shared, and now I have some sort of conversation about it and I want to know more. For us, that's that awakening, right? That awakening of ancestral knowledge, and that's, I would say, one of the things that the collective offers the community, because we've gone through that process ourselves. Now, like I said, as we're serving more Black and Indigenous families and we're creating spaces for Black and Indigenous families, I think my question to my community would be, what do you need to engage in this kind of intersectional space? How do you want us to navigate this? All the things that I think about and that I've heard other people say that they're thinking about.
My biggest source of pride has been grounding more in our decarceral work. You know, we're an abolitionist organization, but we don't live in an abolitionist society. We live in a very carceral society that wants punishment, not transformation. So we have been working to increase our capacity to facilitate decarcerality, and we're also working on holding those community circles so that community knows how to be in conversation with each other when something does happen. We don't just do protesting. While that is an important aspect of our work, and it provides necessary support to families who've been impacted by police violence, the other side of our work is creating spaces for Black people to just exist and not have to be fighting against white supremacy, not have to be worried about, are they gonna experience microaggressions, are they gonna experience racism in the space because they're showing up as a Black person. It is just a space for them to exist in the fullness of their Blackness. So we've been able to work on specifically our building a blueprint for a new world work through the Women's Foundation grant. That has included everything from some of our members creating art-focused spaces for foster youth that are girls, as well as working with Atabay Outdoors to bring our community or introduce rock climbing to our community in a space that's inclusive, and even though the predominant space itself is not.
So Atabay Outdoors provides outdoor programming to Black, Indigenous, and girls of color 8 to 12 years old. And we also combine unique youth development programs with our outdoor programming, so we are encouraging social, emotional, and physical growth. When we first started, we had about 5 Black women show up to our first gathering, and just to see them continue to return is really amazing. When they first came in, it was a little nerve-wracking because the rock climbing gym can be it can be intimidating, it can be overwhelming, it's white dominated, so I think that providing this group for us to be able to spend time with each other, with other Black, Indigenous people, I think that has given them a sense of confidence. Every time they walk in, they know they're going to climb and have fun and interact with other people who look like them.
Yeah, our partnership with Advocate Outdoors is amazing. Something that I'm really hoping that we do is build our own space that centers BIPOC folks, because rock climbing as a space and as a culture is not inclusive, and it has the capability to be, but there's not a lot of intentionality around it except for what BIPOC folks bring into it. So at that point, we could just create it ourselves.
There's a long history of trauma related to the outdoors for the Black and Indigenous communities, and so there's been, generations of people not going outdoors. Going outdoors and being in these spaces is an act of resistance. It's giving us the opportunity to now show up proud and show up happy and joyful into these spaces where we were not welcome before,
That was awesome. We are so privileged to support such wonderful organizations and leaders. I'm just so impressed with the impact these 10 organizations have had on women and girls throughout the state. Thank you again for joining us today. Let's toss it back to our CEO, Amalia, for closing remarks.
What an amazing day. Thank you once again to our presenting sponsor, TEP and Unisource, and to all of you for choosing to spend 3 hours of your Wednesday with us. You might be asking yourself, what can I do today to support this incredible work? We have a number of ways you can get involved. We believe in the time, talent, treasure, and testimony model, and so we have lots of ways to engage. Join the We Network. It's as simple as signing up and adding your voice at crucial steps in the legislative process. Join the Giving Collective. Not only will you be supporting our work, but if you donate $100, you can get the Arizona WFSA keychain. Host a house party. Help us spread the word about not only WFSA's work, but how your friends and family can support women and girls in Arizona. And attend our annual luncheon, returning to the Tucson Convention Center on Thursday, May 4th. Keep a lookout at womengiving.org for more information coming in January. We are so grateful to each and every one of you for tuning in today. We hope our research can prove valuable to you as you continue to champion an Arizona where women and girls of all identities can truly thrive. On behalf of the staff and Board of Trustees for the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona, thank you for attending today. Have a wonderful holiday season and a joyful new year.
Thank you for attending the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona's inaugural virtual summit. Our program has concluded. Your donation can continue supporting women and girls in Arizona. Make a gift by clicking the Donate Now button. You can learn more about WFSA at womengiving.org.